Welcome to Electric Perspectives, a podcast that explores how America's electric companies are working to deliver the reliable, affordable, secure, and clean energy that powers our economy and our everyday lives. The show is brought to you by EEI, the Edison Electric Institute, which represents all U.S. investor-owned electric companies. I'm your host, Brian Reel. Protecting the nation's grid is a top priority for America's electric companies. The electric power industry leads several programs to safeguard the energy grid from all threats and hazards. Today, we'll talk to a couple of EEI security experts about one of these important initiatives. EEI's Culture of Security initiative is comprised of a few different programs to help electric companies collaborate and share best practices, including a peer review to assess security culture. Today, my colleagues David Botts, EEI Managing Director of Cyber and Infrastructure Security, and Caitlin Brennan, EEI Senior Director of Cyber and Infrastructure Security, join the show to discuss culture of security and other initiatives led by our industry, as well as our partnerships with federal agencies to enhance sector-wide resilience to both cyber and physical security threats. So, David and Caitlin, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to chat a bit about our programs.
Happy to be here.
Can you give us a quick introduction of the work that you do here at EEI? And David, we can start with you.
Fundamentally, one of the things that I work on quite a bit is being a bit of a liaison between the members and generally various federal agencies, especially the Department of Energy, on occasion Department of Homeland Security, and some other departments, including the Department of Defense. In addition, we also spend and are spending more time with different states, particularly as the energy grid is changing and there are new and challenging security, cybersecurity, occasionally physical security issues that are really being dealt with at the state level. So functioning as a liaison between agencies and the membership is a big part of what I do.
And how about you, Caitlin?
So in my current role, I work closely with government partners and our members, similar to David, to support our sector, things like collaborating on updates to the NIST cybersecurity framework or DOE's cybersecurity capability maturity model, C2M2. I also work closely with our members on industry-wide programs like Cyber Mutual Assistance, as well as the Culture of Security initiative that we're here to talk about today.
And for those who aren't as familiar or maybe might be hearing that phrase for the first time, can you give a quick, just top-level overview of what Culture of Security is? Sure.
The Culture of Security initiative was envisioned by our member company CEOs to emphasize a better understanding of and to drive continuing improvements to security as a fundamental part of electric companies' corporate cultures. So the goal is really to work with our EEI member companies to share best practices, resources, and other tools that can be used to enhance their organization's security posture in the short term and to support long-term ongoing cultural efforts to foster things like employee awareness, engagement, and participation in security activities.
And when did the program get started or the initiative really get underway? And I recall there were pilot processes. So really, what went into getting this up the ground and what have you learned from running a program this big?
We started the initiative back in 2018 and have kind of grown and developed different elements over the years. So initially, we started with a self-assessment where each of the companies could take the assessment and conduct kind of internal discussions and review of their security culture. And that developed into a webinar series and then progressed to a peer review program. So we've learned a lot over the last several years as we built up these efforts, and we really needed a lot of help and support from our member companies to make sure that we were shaping the program to the way that would work best for them. One of the really foundational elements of the program is that the expertise to build that foundational security within our member companies exists within our sector itself. And so we wanted to create opportunities to bring folks together to build on that.
And David, what was the appetite for members to participate in this sort of program? It sounds like a lot of work, and not to say that companies are resistant to doing work, but I imagine there was a little bit of a sales pitch up front to gain participation and buy-in.
there was a little bit of a sales pitch involved. Frankly, some folks were initially, I would say, a little bit nervous about sharing information. When we have these events, I mean, we have real talk about things that are working well and maybe areas of opportunities. The review can be a little bit uncomfortable, sort of like going for your physical exam on an annual basis. It's always good to go see the doctor, but it on occasion can be a little bit uncomfortable. But one of the things that we have found is that a couple of really major things. One is, to an entity, every single electric company that we have gone through this process, every single one of them said, we are so glad that we did this. And we learned not only more about ourselves, but about what our peers are doing in this space. And it's been extremely beneficial. The other thing that I would suggest that we've seen is that although our companies are located across the United States, and there's different geographies and population densities and climate, and things are different. However, when we talk about methods to address and understand and mitigate risk, there's so much more that is in common and shared than is different.
And knowing that the peer reviews is a big piece of this program, Caitlin, how did the pilots go? I mean, what does the program look like today vis-a-vis when it first got rolled out?
Yeah, we certainly have learned a lot over the course of, we've conducted 7 peer reviews so far. As you can imagine, the first peer review was a pretty labor-intensive effort, required a lot of hands-on participation from the members in helping to develop the overall direction and materials to support the peer review. We have evolved that over time to try and make it a little bit easier on people to participate, make them more consistent across each of the peer reviews. But ultimately, we bring together a team of 30 to 40 subject matter experts from different member companies to review the host utility. That's what we call the utility that's being reviewed. And so the host utility has an opportunity to hear from 30 to 40 peers from upwards of 10 to 15 or more of their other industry peer companies. And they get to provide that kind of outside perspective on the programs and processes and provide input and ideas for different approaches to security programs or challenges that the host utility is facing.
And I know you probably can't get into real granular specifics of lessons learned or actions being taken, but just knowing like you go back to the word culture here. So sharing best practices and developing and maintaining a robust security culture, really, what does that mean to a company and how important is it to actually enable meaningful benchmarking?
Yeah, the benchmarking is, I think, one of the most valuable parts of the program. Every company that participates is in a different place in their maturity journey across the many different programs and areas that we look at. For the peer reviews, we focus in 5 different areas. Pretty broadly, we look at security, governance, risk, and workforce management, cybersecurity protections, physical security protections, response recovery and exercises, and external partnerships and information sharing. So as you can imagine, there are many different opportunities to be more or less mature than the rest of the sector. And so being able to get that outside perspective on your programs and hear from others how they've approached similar challenges gives the host utility and, quite frankly, the peers who are participating on the team the opportunity to kind of jumpstart their maturity journey on initiatives that they're undertaking.
I imagine that the host electric company would be gleaning a lot of the insights because they're hearing all the incoming feedback and suggestions. For broad participants in the program, are there efforts to kind of tease out broad themes and lessons learned that are socialized with everyone, or is every company really having a unique journey and you only have the ability to learn through participation in one of the peer reviews?
We have worked to develop learnings from each of the peer reviews that we've conducted so far. And we found that really there's common themes across every peer review. Really, the difference is what may be a strength some places is more of an opportunity at others, and vice versa. Maturity and security culture in general, and kind of maintaining your culture is a continuous effort. And our members are really committed to that continuous improvement mindset. And so we have highlighted a few things that we've noticed across each of the peer reviews as major items that tend to be apparent in successful, security culture, strong security cultures that we've observed. And really those top items are cross-functional collaboration, and really internal to the company, having everyone see security as a company or enterprise-wide responsibility, not just the responsibility of the security teams, as well as the strength of relationships amongst the security team and the other business units, and the ability to kind of communicate security needs between the security team and the business units, as well as key partners like legal and HR. It's really critical. Also important internal to the company is training and awareness of all employees, and really expanding the reach of the security team through programs like Security Champions or similar efforts, and bringing the security message to each individual employee really can't be understated. Kind of looking outside of the company, some of the key things that we've observed are participating in industry collaboration, both kind of giving and receiving, sharing information, as well as developing and maintaining law enforcement partnerships. Those are critical for both cyber and physical security. Lately, really important for physical security. And then engaging in that external information sharing to benchmark against industry best practices and get a better understanding of the risks and threats that our companies are facing and how to best protect against them.
And a lot of times, discussions of culture really start at the top. David, do you see that the CEOs really have had buy-in, or is that really where some of this originated?
Yeah, it's a great question. Fundamentally, the CEOs were the ones who, demanded this program to be stood up. They've looked at the progress of the companies as it relates to the overall security practices and said, that's all fine, and we demand more. We want more. And so this was truly a CEO initiated and led event. They didn't really want to hear about obstacles or challenges. It's like, let's get this done. And so it's amazing how things can get done when the CEO says, we're going to do it. And so they did.
And Caitlin touched on this a little bit, but security is not just the job of the security team. And she noted that HR and internal comms and other roles really have a responsibility to make sure everyone's kind of savvy with what they can be doing to help ensure security. So what are some ways that electric companies, or really any company, what are they doing to foster and enhance their security culture? Are there simple steps, complicated steps, or kind of all the above?
One of the things that we try to tease out a little bit in some of the various interviews and discussions is methods and means by which every employee, every contractor, really every person who's at the electric companies recognize how they can be a part of the solution. Fundamentally, I'm convinced that every person does have a role to be a human threat detector. Now, depending on what you read and hear about, you might hear some people say, oh, humans are the weakest link. Frankly, I reject that notion. And I would argue that the personnel within an electric company are an extremely vibrant part of the organization's ability to detect and respond to various kinds of threats and really help the organization in the overall risk management.
And without getting too technical, I know there's often talk in our industry of IT and OT. So you have the information technology systems, so the things that help companies run a business. You're accessing Word and getting to files on your network, and it might be the payment program that your customers are using. And then separately, in theory, you have the technologies that's used to operate and manage the grid. When you talk about culture security, is it a focusing on one of the two, or is it all of the above?
Yeah, from my perspective, fundamentally, it's truly all of the above. And one of the things that we really work to try to do as we engage with a host company in terms of reviewing their culture of security is to try and foster open engagement and communication between different parts of the company to bring about an approach that is harmonious within the company to mitigate, manage risk. To your original point, it's quite possible that the humans who manage the security for a customer billing system are different than the humans who take care of the operational technology that runs a power plant. Very different people. Some of the things that they do are very different. There's different performance characteristics that have to be addressed and dealt with. But the great thing about electric companies fundamentally is the recognition that the mission is to provide energy to the customers and the communities that we're privileged to serve. And so in that, we absolutely have a unifying cause to try and help people keep on task and keep managing and reducing risk.
And we often hear that security is not a box checking operation. If I do these three things, I'm good. I'm secure at whatever I'm doing. I guess the flip side of that would be, is this a space where innovation happens? Do we have member companies who are doing innovative and creative things on the security side? And as you, Caitlin, as you kind of work through the peer reviews, again, I know you probably can't share any great details, but are there ever moments where somebody's like, "Ooh, that's a really good idea. We should do that as well"?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that happens almost every peer review. And I think that's largely in part that culture is really unique to each company. And, the relationships that you build can, in some cases, be extremely long standing 10, 20 or more years. And so when you have that level of comfort with your team, you can, approach things in a very different way than if you have kind of a newer group of folks, or maybe, bigger company versus small company. It really depends on company dynamics, but it's been really interesting to see. I mentioned something like security champions earlier. We've seen that across several different peer reviews and kind of taking a different form or shape, with different approaches to how the companies have implemented those. Each have been, I think, really successful in their own right. And there's always opportunities for the peer review team to take away lessons from how the host utility is implementing their programs and vice versa. So we've definitely seen a lot of interesting and new approaches to things. And I think that's been really one of the interesting benefits of having the peer review program and being able to participate, is that across the companies who have participated, we've really seen that kind of dedication to continuous improvement and the willingness to assess existing security programs, and then being open to exploring and developing new approaches to those programs, or the different processes, as a way to continue to foster and strengthen security culture.
I know through the peer reviews, you're working with companies that are much larger than EEI, which is a smaller association. Are there things, though, that you're learning as you're working with companies that you bring back to our information security and IT teams here at EEI and are like, hey, we're doing this, or hey, this is something we might want to consider?
There are practices, disciplines, tools, and techniques that we've had the opportunity to observe working and talking and engaging with member companies that we have, in fact, sort of gone back to our home shop and said, hey, I think there are some opportunities here for enhancement that we can take a look at. So scalability is an issue, but there's an opportunity for everybody. Now, one of the things that Caitlin may have mentioned, but I'd like to build on it a little bit, is that not only does the culture of security peer review create a framework for information exchange between the peer reviewers and the host company, it 100% provides an opportunity for the peer reviewers to hear their peers from another state or halfway across the country in their approach to a particular specific risk management technique. And so we have heard not only the host company coming away saying, "Oh, we learned a lot," we hear the other reviewers come away from the peer review event saying, "I learned a lot about some new techniques or ideas."
And again, I know we touched on this a little bit before, but for making sure that companies who might not have been involved in a particular peer review process, so either a reviewer or the host company there, is this something where you're actually hosting any sort of webinars or workshops with the broader EEI member company security community? Or is this like written reports that people read at their leisure, or are the conversations continuing, I guess?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. We actually do all of those things that you mentioned. And so from kind of a broad membership perspective, we try to bring in folks who haven't been able to participate, either bandwidth issues or just, the timing hasn't worked out. We have bi-monthly webinars where we ask folks to share on topics that they feel like they have leading practices or they've made a lot of progress lately, or things that they're, potentially newly going to tackle, in trying to get kind of perspective from each other on what challenges or obstacles to look out for that they might be able to avoid, by learning those lessons from the community. We've also developed, I think I mentioned earlier, a report that kind of summarizes the observations we've made across the initial set of peer reviews. But then we also have the opportunity for folks to participate in what we call focus area workshops, which are a smaller time commitment than the peer review. The peer review involves documentation review and kind of training, and then is a more drawn out process. But for the focus area workshops, they're a much shorter, more intensive focus on a specific topic where members do a deep dive into each other's programs and share and ask questions of each other in a roundtable setting. So rather than one company being reviewed, it's all the participating companies being reviewed on one single topic. And so this really allows the members to talk about pretty specific challenges and successes in detail, and then share the different paths and approaches that they've taken to get there with culture and with the security culture within their companies. What works for one might not work for all, but there's definite value in those lessons learned. In addition to helping each other avoid potential roadblocks or obstacles to the projects they're undertaking, it also helps to establish a direct kind of peer network for continual benchmarking and sharing across subject matter experts within our member companies as well.
Well, thank you both. The peer review program is one of just many that I know your EI security and preparedness team is working on to really just drive industry-wide collaboration and just seeing clearly the benefit of information sharing, especially it relates to just the collective security of the industry. Might be conversations for another day, David, but are there other programs like this? Is there kind of a whole portfolio of things like this that your team's tackling?
Well, as you might be aware, the security environment that our companies are operating in changes literally every day. So there's new federal or regulatory initiatives that may happen at the federal level or at the state level. There's new technologies to be involved, particularly as electric companies are implementing new renewable energy sources. There's a whole technology platform called inverter-based resources, and we have to work on enhancing the security for this new technology. There's new performance baselines being advocated for by the federal government, and right now, today, we are working very closely with the Department of Energy, along with the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners on performance baselines for electric companies to include distribution systems and distributed energy resources. And so every day is a new day, and there's always lots of opportunities for new activities in the security space.
Well, I know you both are busy, so thank you so much for taking some time to share what you're up to with us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
And that's our show for today. Thank you for listening, and come back next week to hear more from experts and industry leaders who are talking about the innovative ways electric companies are building a cleaner, smarter, stronger energy future for the customers and communities they serve. You can subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Electric Perspectives. I'm your host, Brian Reel. Thanks for listening.